Long before anyone called him an explorer, before the frozen camps, before the missing journals, before the maps that ended in empty white space, he was just a quiet child standing near a harbor at night. And honestly, he probably should have stayed there. The town where he grew up sat beside a cold gray sea. Not a cheerful sea either. This one looked tired all the time. The waves slapped against the docks like they had been working double shifts for centuries. Ships came and went every week. Big wooden ships with cracked sails. Fishing boats that smelled like regret. Merchant vessels loaded with spices, cloth, and sailors who had absolutely not bathed in several months. The harbor was loud during the day, but at night, that was when the stories appeared. The boy loved sneaking down to the docks after sunset. He would sit quietly beside old ropes and damp barrels while sailors talked around small lantern fires. Some stories were clearly nonsense. One sailor claimed he fought a bear using only a spoon. Another swore there was an island where birds stole boots directly off people's feet. Very dangerous place for fashionable pirates. But mixed inside the foolish stories were other tales. Quiet ones. Stories about giant mountains beyond the northern ice. Black forests where no birds sang. Ancient ruins hidden deep in deserts where the wind never stopped blowing. Places so far away they barely sounded real. The boy listened to every word. He rarely spoke much himself. Other children in town spent their time wrestling in the mud, chasing chickens, or throwing rocks at things for reasons nobody fully understood. But this boy preferred maps. His mother once found him asleep under the kitchen table beside an old sea chart. He had ink on his hands, and somehow on his forehead too. A very talented achievement. His father worked repairing ships along the harbor. Quiet man, tired eyes, hands rough from salt and splintered wood. He believed in practical things. Warm meals, strong rope, staying alive. Reasonable goals, honestly. But the boy kept asking impossible questions. What's past the northern sea? How far does the desert go? What happens if you keep walking east? His father usually answered the same way. You run out of food. Which, to be fair, was probably the correct answer most of the time. Still, the boy could not stop wondering. At night he would climb onto the roof of their small home and stare at distant ships becoming tiny shadows against the horizon. The horizon fascinated him. That thin line where the world simply disappeared. Most people looked at it and felt comfort. The edge of home. He looked at it and felt challenged. As if the world itself was hiding something. And somewhere deep inside him, something quiet began growing. Not bravery. Not exactly. It was hunger. The strange kind that cannot be filled with food. Years passed slowly in the harbor town. Storms rolled in every winter. Thick fog covered the docks in spring. The bells of arriving ships echoed through narrow streets. And every season, more travelers arrived. One autumn evening, an old navigator came ashore during a terrible storm. He was ancient. At least that's how the boy remembered him. Huge gray beard. Missing 2 fingers. Face covered in lines carved by wind and bad decisions. The old man stayed at the harbor inn for nearly a month while his damaged ship was repaired. Every night he sat near the fire with a heavy leather journal beside him. And eventually, the boy gathered enough courage to speak to him. "Have you really crossed the Southern Ocean?" he asked. The old navigator looked down slowly, then laughed. Not a cheerful laugh either. The kind people make when remembering things they probably should not have survived. "I did," the old man said. "What was there?" The navigator stared into the fire for a long moment. "Mostly cold rain," he replied. Then after a pause, he added quietly, "And places no map ever got right." That sentence stayed with the boy for years. No map ever got right. It sounded mysterious, dangerous, perfect. The old navigator began teaching him small things after that. How to read stars. How sailors track direction. Why maps changed over time. Why some coastlines simply vanished from old charts. Because people guessed, the old man explained one night. Half the world was drawn by frightened men trying to sound confident. Honestly, not much has changed. The boy learned quickly. Too quickly sometimes. Soon he spent every spare moment studying old charts borrowed from sailors. He copied symbols carefully onto scraps of paper. He memorized trade routes and currents and mountain ranges. Other children his age learned farming. He learned how people got lost. And slowly, something else happened. The town around him began feeling smaller. Not physically, emotionally. The streets he once loved started feeling narrow, predictable. He knew which floorboards creaked inside the bakery, knew when the fishing bells rang, knew which sailors told fake stories after too much ale. Everything became familiar, too familiar. The horizon kept calling to him, especially at night. One winter evening, after heavy snow covered the harbor, the boy stood alone at the frozen docks. The sea was almost completely silent. No ships, no voices, just cold wind moving across the dark water. And above him, thousands of stars. He imagined roads between them, invisible paths stretching across oceans and mountains and forgotten lands. Most people, standing there alone in the freezing cold, would probably think, "I should go inside before I die." Very fair thought. But the boy thought something else entirely. He thought about distance, about places where nobody knew his name, about forests untouched by roads, about empty spaces on maps. And somewhere in that freezing silence, he made a promise to himself. One day he would travel farther than anyone else, farther than the old navigators, farther than the merchants, farther than the maps themselves. He would keep going until the world finally ran out of horizon. And many years later, that promise would carry him somewhere no one ever came back from.
The boy grew older, slowly at first, then all at once. One year, he was sneaking around the harbor listening to sailors argue about storms and soup recipes. And the next, he was taller than his father and spending entire nights studying candlelit maps while normal people slept peacefully, like sensible human beings. By the age of 17, everyone in town already knew two things about him. First, he was very smart. And second, he was absolutely terrible at staying interested in ordinary life. He forgot birthdays, forgot meals, once forgot he was supposed to help repair a fishing boat and accidentally spent 6 straight hours reading about mountain passes in distant kingdoms. The fishermen were not impressed. His mother worried about him constantly, not because he was cruel or reckless. Actually, he was quiet, gentle even, but there was always this feeling around him, like part of him already lived somewhere far away. Even when sitting at the dinner table, especially at the dinner table. One rainy evening, his father finally asked the question everyone had been thinking. "Why do you care so much about places you've never seen?" The young man looked up from a map spread across the table. For a moment, he seemed unsure how to answer. Then he said quietly, "Because they're still there." Simple answer, but something about it unsettled the room. His father sighed heavily and returned to repairing a lantern. Conversation over. Meanwhile, the young man's obsession only grew stronger. He began traveling to nearby cities to study under navigators, scholars, and mapmakers. And this was not glamorous work at all. Movies make exploration look exciting. In reality, much of it involved damp libraries, bad lighting, and old men arguing over coastlines. One mapmaker nearly started a fistfight because someone misplaced a river. Cartography was apparently very emotional work. Still, the young man loved it. The smell of ink, stacks of cracked journals, ancient charts with faded corners, maps filled with blank spaces labeled things like unknown region, or worse, here be monsters. Which honestly feels unfair to the monsters. Maybe they just wanted privacy. He studied everything: ocean currents, star navigation, mountain survival, weather patterns, languages used by traders and travelers. He learned how explorers measured distance by the stars, how they survived storms, how they rationed food, how easily people disappeared when they pushed too far into unknown land. That part fascinated him most. Not the glory, not fame, the disappearing. Whole expeditions swallowed by deserts or ice. Ships found drifting empty across silent seas. Lost camps buried beneath snow. The world, he realized, was much larger than people admitted. And much quieter. Years passed. His reputation slowly spread among scholars and navigators. People respected him because he worked harder than anyone else. But they also found him strange. He rarely celebrated, rarely relaxed. Other young men spent evenings drinking or chasing romance. He spent his nights copying damaged maps by candlelight while muttering about river systems. Not exactly the life of a party. One professor described him as a man already halfway gone. And honestly, that turned out to be very accurate. By his mid-20s, he had joined several smaller expeditions. Nothing legendary yet, just difficult journeys into rough territory, mountain crossings, forest surveys, long voyages through freezing northern waters. He learned important lessons quickly. For example, boots matter more than pride. Wet blankets destroy morale faster than danger. And no expedition in history has ever had enough dry socks. These were truths the maps rarely mentioned. On one northern voyage, his ship became trapped in sea ice for nearly 3 weeks. The crew grew restless. Arguments broke out daily. One sailor became convinced a seal was following them on purpose. Another tried eating candle wax. Human beings become very strange when trapped together too long. But the young explorer remained calm, almost too calm. While others panicked, he sat quietly recording ice movements and sketching the coastline. The captain noticed this. "You don't scare easily," the captain told him one night. The explorer shook his head. "Oh, I scare easily," he replied. "I just keep going anyway." That answer stayed with the captain for years. Because it was true, the explorer was not fearless. That's important. Fearless people usually die young and dramatically. He simply believed something waited beyond the edge of the known world. Something important. And every year, the feeling grew stronger. Then one winter, everything changed. He had traveled inland to study at a large archive in an old stone city far from the coast. The archive was enormous. Cold hallways, dust everywhere, shelves packed with crumbling records nobody had touched in centuries. Perfect place, honestly. Most scholars hated working in the lower storage rooms because they were damp and smelled terrible. The explorer loved them immediately. One snowy evening, while searching through damaged trade records, he discovered something unusual hidden between several ruined charts. A fragmented map. Small, brittle with age, partially burned along the edges. At first glance, it looked unfinished. But then he noticed the markings. Mountain symbols unlike any known range. Notes written in faded ink. Strange routes leading far beyond explored territory. And near the bottom corner, a phrase written in hurried handwriting. "Beyond this point, the land continues farther than expected." The explorer stared at those words for a very long time. Farther than expected. His heartbeat quickened. The map appeared to show part of a region no official records fully described. Several older explorers had mentioned it briefly in scattered journals. Most never returned. Others came back sick, confused, or unwilling to speak clearly about what they had seen. Naturally, this made the explorer even more interested. Very bad sign. Over the following weeks, he became obsessed with the fragment. He compared it against trade routes, ancient military records, sailor journals, and old expedition notes. Patterns slowly appeared. There were references to an enormous unexplored territory beyond the northern ranges. A place avoided by traders, ignored by kingdoms, almost erased from official maps entirely. And the strangest part? The few surviving accounts all describe the same feeling. Silence. Not ordinary silence. Something deeper. As though the land itself wanted to remain unknown. Most people would hear that and wisely decide never to go there. The explorer did the opposite. One night, sitting alone beside a dying candle, he carefully traced the fragmented route with his finger. Across mountains, beyond rivers, into empty white space. The same white emptiness he had stared at as a child beside the harbor sea. Only now, he finally had a direction. And somewhere deep inside himself, he understood something quietly terrifying. His real journey had not begun at the docks when he was a boy. It was beginning now, with a broken map, a frozen city, and a place no map had ever fully explained.